Hey everyone, tonight we were stepping quietly onto a field where glory died faster than the men who carried it. Not a field of banners and songs, but one of mud, blood and breath, where the air itself seemed to tremble beneath the weight of fear. Imagine it, a pale dawn on the edge of war. The ground is slick, churned with hoofprints and water from last night's rain. Smoke drifts from a dozen campfires, the smell of burnt meat and iron clinging to the air. Men stand in lines, silent, their armor heavy on their shoulders, their hands raw from tightening straps that dig into skin. Somewhere, a trumpet waits to sound. You can hear it, the creak of leather, the whisper of prayer, the low murmur of those pretending not to be afraid. Steam rises from their mouths as they breathe in the cold morning, eyes fixed on the mist ahead, where the enemy waits unseen. The mud beneath their boots feels alive, swallowing each step, as though the earth itself is reluctant to give them back. And then there's the sound of the world holding its breath. A single heartbeat stretched thin between life and death. When the horn finally breaks the silence, it's not courage that moves them forward, but the quiet terror of standing still. When stories tell of knights and valor, they leave this part out. The ache, the weight, the smell of a world breaking. The battlefield was never about honor, it was about endurance. So, before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you enjoy these slow descents into the forgotten corners of history. And tell me where you're listening from tonight. Somewhere, the wind still carries the echoes of swords and screams through the fields of the past. Now, close your eyes. Picture the fog curling low over the ground, the gleam of steel in the half-light, and the cold breath of morning before the first charge. Let us begin the story of why you wouldn't last 30 seconds on a medieval battlefield. Before the charge, the weight of armor. The air, thick with the damp chill of a medieval dawn, carried the pervasive scent of wet earth, nervous horses, and the metallic tang of countless weapons. But for the knight already positioned in the long, rigid lines of battle, another more intimate sensation dominated, the weight of armor. Before the first blow, there's already pain. Iron biting into shoulder and thigh, sweat pooling beneath the helmet's edge, a profound, relentless burden that transformed the noble ideal of chivalry into a brutal, physical struggle for endurance, even before the chaos of combat truly began. Imagine the sky, a bruised grey expanse, slowly brightening over a vast, muddy field, stretching to a horizon obscured by morning mist. The sounds were no longer the simple chatter of a camp. They included the low murmur of thousands of men, the rhythmic shift of horses, the distant blare of trumpets, and the ceaseless creak of leather and chainmail. Flickering torchlight over dented helmets illuminated faces etched with grim determination and profound apprehension. The knight's armor, meticulously crafted by master smiths, was a formidable testament to medieval technology and a symbol of his status. Full plate armor, or even a heavy hauberk of chainmail, could weigh anywhere from 50 to 70 pounds or more, distributed across the body. Donning it was a laborious process, often requiring the assistance of squires, and once on it transformed the human body into a cumbersome, if protected, fortress. Listen to the rhythmic creak of leather straps, the subtle clink of chainmail, the heavy scrape of steel plates rubbing against each other with every small movement. Hear the muffled, anxious breathing of the knight within his helmet, the sound amplified by the enclosed space. See the long, rigid lines of mounted knights, their forms immense and intimidating, yet their movements constrained, each man a prisoner within his own metal shell. Before the first blow, there's already pain, iron biting into shoulder and thigh, sweat pooling beneath the helmet's edge. The sheer weight of the armor distributed across the shoulders, hips, and thighs began to cause discomfort almost immediately. Sharp edges, improperly padded straps, and the relentless pressure of overlapping plates bit into the flesh, creating chafing, sores, and a dull, pervasive ache that resonated deep in the bones. Sweat, despite the cold morning air, would quickly begin to pool beneath the helmet's edge, trickling down the face, stinging the eyes. The enclosed helmet, designed for protection, became a suffocating oven, trapping heat and moisture, making breathing a conscious effort. Claustrophobia, a subtle but profound fear, could easily set in, intensifying the sense of confinement. The physical exertion of simply standing in armor for hours, awaiting the command to charge, was immense. Every small movement, every adjustment, every attempt to ease a stiff limb became an arduous task, draining precious energy from an already tense body. The exhaustion, the discomfort, the pain, these were not merely distractions, they were profound physical challenges that tested a knight's endurance long before he even reached the enemy line. The glory of battle, the ideals of chivalry, were often a distant thought, replaced by the immediate visceral reality of the weight, the heat, the pain. The helmet, restricting vision to a narrow slit, amplified the sense of isolation, making the world a fragmented, terrifying view. Iron biting into shoulder and thigh, sweat pooling beneath the helmet's edge. The weight of armor was a pervasive, fundamental reality for medieval knights, transforming their noble identity into a constant, brutal battle against physical constraint. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments before the charge, forever tethered to the relentless burden of steel and the grim reality of pain. The waiting line. With the crushing weight of armor pressing on every limb and the relentless ache already setting in, the Roman legionary found himself in a state of profound, agonizing anticipation. The waiting line was a brutal psychological crucible. Men stand shoulder to shoulder, pretending not to hear their own hearts. The air smells of wet hay, rust, and fear, a pervasive, suffocating blend that transformed the moments before battle into an eternity of suspended terror, testing courage, sharpening resolve, and revealing the quiet horror beneath the glory of warfare. Imagine the sky, a bruised grey expanse, slowly brightening over a vast muddy field. The sounds were no longer the simple chatter of a camp. They included the low murmur of thousands of men, the rhythmic shift of horses, the distant blare of trumpets, and the ceaseless creak of leather and chainmail. Flickering torchlight over dented helmets illuminated faces etched with grim determination and profound apprehension. The formation was tight, disciplined. Shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, the ranks of infantry stretched for hundreds of yards, an unyielding wall of steel and flesh. For the knight, or the foot soldier, standing in this formation was an act of profound communal vulnerability. Your life depended on the man next to you, and his life on you. Listen to the muffled sounds of thousands of men standing in tense silence. Hear the low murmur of whispered prayers, quick, desperate pleas to God, to saints, to ancestors, for protection in the coming onslaught. See the ground beneath your feet, already churned into thick, cloying mud by countless boots and hooves, now slowly turning black with the early morning damp. Men stand shoulder to shoulder, pretending not to hear their own hearts. The rhythmic thumping in your chest, a frantic drum against your ribs, was a visceral affirmation of profound fear. Every man felt it, but none dared show it. To betray fear was to weaken the line, to undermine the collective resolve, to invite contempt from your comrades. So they stood, rigid and unyielding, masks of stoicism hiding a roiling storm of terror. The air smells of wet hay, rust and fear. The pungent aroma of wet hay used as bedding for horses mingled with the metallic tang of rust from countless weapons and pieces of armor. But beneath these, a deeper, more insidious smell permeated the air, the acrid, unmistakable scent of human fear, sweat, adrenaline, the visceral odor of profound apprehension that clung to every man, a constant, unspoken declaration of the imminent horror. The cold of the morning bit deep, penetrating through layers of wool and leather. Muscles, already aching from the weight of armor and the long wait, stiffened further. The fog, clinging low to the ground, obscured the distant enemy lines, transforming the battlefield into an eerie, featureless void, amplifying the psychological tension. The moments stretched into an eternity. Each second was amplified by the anticipation of the charge, the knowledge that in a heartbeat the ordered lines would dissolve into a chaos of brutal violence. The desire to flee, a primal instinct, warred with the iron discipline, the unwavering loyalty to one's lord and one's comrades. The waiting line was a crucible that tested the very soul of a warrior. It was a profound psychological battle, fought in silence, within the confines of their own minds, long before the clang of steel. Men stand shoulder to shoulder, pretending not to hear their own heart. The air smells of wet hay, rust, and fear. The waiting line was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the moments before combat into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound psychological pressure. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments before the charge, forever tethered to the relentless burden of anticipation and the grim reality of fear. The trumpets cry. With the oppressive weight of armor, the gnawing fear, and the agonizing anticipation of the waiting line pressing down, the medieval battlefield became a crucible of human endurance. Then, cutting through the profound stillness that held thousands of hearts in a silent vice, came the signal. The trumpet's cry was a piercing, unequivocal command. A single sound splits the air, and for a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then chaos begins, transforming disciplined ranks into a maelstrom of brutal violence, marking the terrifying, irrevocable descent from tense stillness to the full, unbridled horror of medieval combat. Imagine the sky, a bruised grey expanse, slowly brightening over a vast, muddy field, its distant edges still obscured by morning mist. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of nervous men or the rhythmic shift of horses. They included the ceaseless creak of leather and chainmail, the distant flutter of banners, and then, piercing all, the sharp, insistent blare of a trumpet. Flickering torchlight over dented helmets illuminated faces etched with grim determination and profound apprehension. Thousands of men stood, shoulder to shoulder, a rigid, unyielding line of steel and flesh, their eyes fixed on the distant enemy, their bodies tense with a profound, almost unbearable anticipation. The air, thick with the smell of wet hay, rust, and fear, hung heavy, pregnant with the promise of imminent bloodshed. Listen to the low hum of nervous tension, the subtle shifts of armor, the ragged breathing of men, all amplified in the profound stillness that gripped the battlefield. Hear the distant blare of a trumpet, a single, sharp sound, suddenly echoing across the vast, muddy field, cutting through the silence with brutal efficiency. See the standard-bearers, their faces grim, raising their banners higher, their movements a synchronized final preparation. A single sound splits the air, and for a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. The trumpet's cry was the ultimate command, the signal to advance, to charge, to unleash the stored fury and terror of thousands of men. For that brief, agonizing heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Every man, from the mightiest knight to the humblest foot soldier, felt the profound weight of that sound, the irrevocable crossing of a threshold, the commitment to battle. Then chaos begins, the roar of thousands of men, a primal, guttural scream would erupt. The ground would tremble under the thunderous charge of cavalry, the rhythmic tramp of infantry. Swords would be drawn, lances lowered, axes hefted. The air would fill with the terrifying sounds of men rushing into battle, shouts, battle cries, the frantic pounding of hooves. The disciplined lines, maintained with such arduous effort, would begin to move forward, slowly at first, then gathering speed, a vast, unstoppable wave of human and animal might. The distant enemy, once a blurred silhouette, would grow larger, more terrifying, their own battle cries rising to meet the onslaught. The psychological impact was immense. The trumpet's cry was not just a signal, it was a profound transformation. It shattered the agonizing anticipation, unleashing a torrent of adrenaline, transforming fear into a desperate, focused resolve. It was the point of no return, the moment when individual choice dissolved into the collective, brutal imperative of battle. The medieval battlefield was a place of unparalleled horror, and the trumpet's cry was its grim overture, its searing, definitive call to arms. A single sound splits the air, and for a heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then chaos begins. The trumpet's cry was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the moments before combat into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound psychological pressure. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments before the charge, forever tethered to the relentless sound of a world descending into brutal, unbridled violence. The clash of iron. With the trumpet's piercing cry shattering the strained silence, transforming anticipation into a thunderous charge, the medieval battlefield erupted into a maelstrom of brutal violence. The clash of iron was the horrifying reality of close-quarters combat. No elegance, no chivalry, just screams, splintered shields, and the crushing weight of bodies in mud. It was a deafening, visceral symphony of death, stripping away any illusion of glory, revealing the quiet horror beneath the heroic tales, a brutal, relentless struggle for mere seconds of survival, the clash of iron. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by thousands of struggling feet. The sounds were no longer the distant blare of trumpets. They included the deafening clang of steel on steel, the splintering crack of wood, the guttural shouts of men, and the desperate, horrifying screams of the wounded. Fog drifting through ruined fields now mingled with the chaos of combat, obscured individual horrors in a haze of brutal, indiscriminate violence. The initial impact of two charging lines was cataclysmic. Horses, their powerful bodies a thunderous force, crashed into the disciplined ranks of infantry, followed by the relentless push of men, shield to shield, spear to spear. The ordered lines, so meticulously maintained moments before, dissolved instantly into a swirling, suffocating mass of struggling bodies. Listen to the deafening clang of steel on steel, a relentless, jarring symphony as swords met shields, axes met helmets, and maces met plate armor. Hear the splintering crack of wooden shields, buckling under the force of blows, their protective surfaces shattering into lethal shards. See the glint of sharpened blades, the flash of axes, the dull gleam of maces moving with terrifying speed in the confined, chaotic space. No elegance, no chivalry, just screams, splintered shields, and the weight of bodies in mud. This was not the stylized, romantic combat of minstrels' tales. There was no room for individual heroics, no time for elegant duels. It was a brutal, anonymous struggle fought in suffocating proximity, where skill was often overwhelmed by brute force, by exhaustion, by the sheer press of bodies. Screams raw and visceral tore through the cacophony, the screams of men hit by a blade, crushed by a horse, or falling wounded into the churning mud. The ground itself, already thick with churned soil, quickly became slick with blood, making footing treacherous, transforming the battlefield into a treacherous, deadly mire. The weight of bodies in mud was immense. Men, encumbered by heavy armor, stumbled, fell, and were trampled underfoot by the relentless press of the living. The mud, thick and cloying, sucked at their boots, hampering movement, making it almost impossible to rise once fallen. To be knocked down was often a death sentence, swiftly dealt by the anonymous, brutal blows of 1,000 enemies. The psychological impact was immense. The overwhelming noise, the suffocating proximity, the visceral horror of the sights and sounds of death, these combined to shatter sanity, to push men to the absolute limits of their endurance. Fear, raw and primal, fueled their desperate, chaotic fight for survival, often reduced to mere seconds. The clash of iron was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the moments of combat into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound physical brutality. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments before the charge, forever tethered to the relentless clang of steel and the grim reality of a brutal, unromanticized death in the mud. The fallen standard. As the deafening clamor of the clash of iron reached its brutal crescendo, and the battlefield dissolved into a suffocating maelstrom of mud, blood, and desperate violence, the true measure of a fighting force was revealed. The fallen standard was a profound, chilling symbol. When the banner drops, no one calls retreat, only the silence of men too tired to lift their arms, transforming heroic ideals into the grim reality of exhaustion and defeat, marking the terrifying, irrevocable end of organized resistance on a medieval battlefield. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by thousands of struggling feet. The sounds were no longer the triumphant blare of trumpets or the deafening clang of steel. They included the desperate cries of the wounded, the guttural grunts of men in their final struggles, and the profound, almost eerie silence that fell in the wake of ultimate defeat. Fog drifting through ruined fields now mingled with the chaos of combat, obscured individual horrors in a haze of brutal, indiscriminate violence. The standard, the banner or flag of a knight, a lord or a regiment, was far more than a mere piece of cloth. It was a sacred symbol of honor, of identity, of rallying point, of the very will to fight. To carry it was a privilege, a profound responsibility. To see it fall was a devastating blow, a clear, unmistakable sign of disarray, of defeat, of the unraveling of order. Listen to the desperate cries of the wounded, their voices hoarse with pain and despair, echoing through the carnage. Hear the guttural grunts of men in their final struggles, their lives ebbing away in the mud. See the vibrant colours of a once proud banner emblazoned with heraldic symbols, now lying trampled in the thick, blood-soaked mud, its poles splintered, its glorious image a testament to utter defeat. When the banner drops, no one calls retreat, only the silence of men too tired to lift their arms. In the brutal chaos of medieval combat, a fallen standard was often the point of no return. It signalled the collapse of morale, the shattering of cohesion, the end of any hope of coordinated resistance. The men, exhausted beyond measure, their bodies screaming with pain, their minds dulled by shock and fatigue, would simply cease to fight, their weapons falling from numb hands. The silence that followed was profound, heavy with the weight of defeat, of death, of despair. It was not the silence of peace, but the terrifying stillness of utter exhaustion, of bodies that had pushed beyond their limits, now too broken to even lift their arms in defense. The roar of battle would recede, replaced by the mournful cries of the wounded and the grim efficiency of the victors. The psychological impact was immense. The sight of their fallen standard, of their broken ranks, of their exhausted comrades, shattered any lingering illusions of glory. It was a brutal lesson in the unromanticized reality of medieval warfare, where triumph and defeat were often decided by the limits of human endurance. The field, once a canvas for martial glory, was now a landscape of carnage, a sea of broken bodies, splintered shields, and trampled banners. The mud, thick with blood, and the remnants of battle covered everything, slowly claiming the fallen, burying the evidence of their brutal end. When the banner drops, no one calls retreat, only the silence of men too tired to lift their arms. The fallen standard was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the moments of defeat into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound physical brutality. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments before the charge, forever tethered to the relentless clang of steel and the grim reality of an unromanticized, utterly exhausted end. The aftermath. The smoke that follows, as the last desperate cries faded and the furious clash of iron finally subsided, the medieval battlefield, once a maelstrom of brutal violence, descended into an eerie, profound stillness. This was the immediate aftermath, a landscape of carnage and desolation, shrouded in a chilling pall. The smoke that follows was an omnipresent, haunting reality. The field is quiet, save for the crows. Smoke drifts like ghosts over the broken, transforming the brutal sight into a spectral realm, a silent testament to death, sorrow, and the invisible scars left by the glory of war. Imagine the air, heavy with the acrid stench of burning timber from nearby villages, mingled with the metallic tang of fresh blood, the subtle aroma of scorched earth, and the pervasive scent of human fear and despair. The sounds were no longer the deafening roar of battle. They included the distant call of crows, the low moans of the wounded, and the unsettling crackle of smouldering ruins. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now mingled with thick, grey smoke, obscured individual horrors in a haze of profound, unsettling quiet. The battle was over. The victors, exhausted but triumphant, would have begun their grim work, securing prisoners, tending to their own wounded, and, most importantly, initiating the plunder. But for the vast silent majority, for the broken, the defeated, the dead, only stillness remained. Listen to the distant, mournful call of crows, their harsh cries a grim lament, circling high above the carnage, already sensing their gruesome feast. Hear the low moans of the wounded, their voices hoarse with pain and thirst, echoing faintly across the desolate field, a haunting reminder of the suffering that lingered. See the vast, muddy expanse now littered with thousands of broken bodies, men, horses, their forms grotesquely twisted, their armor dented, their weapons scattered. The smoke that follows was pervasive, a thick, grey pall that hung low over the battlefield. It drifted like ghosts over the broken, rising from smouldering villages, from burning siege engines, from the remnants of campfires left unattended in the chaos. This acrid haze obscured visibility, transforming the landscape into a dreamlike, spectral realm, a chilling shroud over the immense human cost of medieval warfare. The field is quiet, save for the crows. The overwhelming silence after the deafening clamor of battle was profound, almost unbearable. It was not the silence of peace, but the terrifying stillness of death, punctuated only by the sounds of scavengers and the lingering suffering of the dying. The vast, empty sky, once a witness to martial glory, now looked down on a scene of utter desolation. The psychological impact on the survivors, on those tasked with navigating this landscape of death, was immense. The smoke, the silence, the sheer scale of the carnage, these combined to engrave an indelible memory of horror, eroding any lingering illusions of glory. The field is quiet, save for the crows. Smoke drifts like ghosts over the broken. The smoke that follows was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the immediate aftermath into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash. Forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of a brutal, unromanticized death, its smoke a haunting echo of forgotten lives. The wounded ground. As the smoke drifted like ghosts over the silent, broken bodies of the fallen, and the crows began their grim feast, the medieval battlefield bore witness to a profound, visceral transformation. The wounded ground was a haunting, indelible testament to the brutal clash. Blood turns to black mud, armor sinks into soil. The earth remembers what humans wish to forget, absorbing the horror, burying the evidence, and perpetually echoing the quiet suffering that lay beneath the superficial glory of medieval warfare. Imagine the air, heavy with the acrid stench of battle, mingled with the metallic tang of dried blood, the earthy aroma of churned soil, and the pervasive scent of human despair. The sounds were no longer the distant call of crows alone. They included the low moans of the dying, the soft rustle of scavenging animals, and the profound, almost eerie silence that clung to a landscape soaked in human suffering. Fog drifting through ruined fields now mingled with the red mist of memory, obscured individual horrors in a haze of profound desolation. The field, once a place of cultivation, of natural beauty, was now a desecrated canvas of carnage. Thousands of men and horses had clashed here, their bodies colliding, their weapons striking, their lives extinguished in a brutal maelstrom of violence. The very ground had absorbed the full force of this horror, becoming a silent, permanent witness. Listen to the low moans of the dying, their voices hoarse with pain and thirst, echoing faintly across the desolate field, a haunting reminder of the suffering that lingered. Hear the soft rustle of scavenging animals drawn by the scent of blood, their movements a grim counterpoint to the stillness. See the vast, muddy expanse now littered with thousands of broken bodies, men, horses, their forms grotesquely twisted, their armor dented, their weapons scattered. The ground, already churned into thick, cloying mud by countless boots and hooves, was now thoroughly saturated with blood. It seeped into the soil, mingling with the mud, turning the earth into a dark, viscous, horrifying black, a permanent stain on the landscape. This was not just a battlefield, it was a grave, absorbing the very essence of human life and suffering. Armor, heavy and cumbersome, slowly sank into the churned, blood-soaked mud. Helmets, shields, breastplates, once symbols of pride and protection, were now discarded, broken, or simply swallowed by the earth, their gleaming surfaces dulled by grime and rust. These remnants of martial glory, now buried in the soil, became silent testament to the fleeting nature of human power. The earth remembers what humans wish to forget. The land, with its profound ancient memory, would hold these grim relics for centuries. Future generations ploughing these fields would unearth fragments of bone, rusted pieces of armor, a broken sword, silent, unsettling reminders of the brutal clash that occurred here. The ground itself became a haunting repository of human tragedy. The psychological impact on the survivors, on those tasked with burying the dead or returning to this hallowed ground, was immense. The sights, the smells, the profound silence of the wounded ground, these combined to engrave an indelible memory of horror, eroding any lingering illusions of glory. Blood turns to black mud. Armor sinks into soil, and the earth remembers what humans wish to forget. The wounded ground was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the immediate aftermath into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of a brutal, unromanticized death, its scars etched into the very earth. Blood turns to black mud, armor sinks into soil. The mercy blow. As the sun began its slow, indifferent descent over the carnage of the medieval battlefield, casting long, grotesque shadows across the wounded ground, the immediate horror of combat slowly gave way to a chilling, yet often necessary, act. The mercy blow was a grim, pervasive reality. A soldier moved among the fallen, blade raised, ending pain or silencing witnesses, transforming compassion into a brutal, utilitarian act, an unspoken code of medieval warfare that blurred the lines between mercy and murder, between humanity and cold, strategic necessity. Imagine the air, heavy with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by the brief, sporadic movements of the living. The sounds were no longer the deafening clang of steel. They included the low moans of the gravely wounded, the distant caw of crows, and the soft, rhythmic tread of boots amidst the carnage. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the broken bodies, obscured individual horrors in a haze of profound, unsettling quiet. The battle was over, but the killing was not. Thousands of men, grievously wounded, lay scattered across the field. Some cried out for help, for water, for a priest. Others, beyond speech, simply writhed in agony, their lives slowly, painfully ebbing away in the mud and cold. Listen to the low moans of the dying, their voices hoarse with pain and thirst, echoing faintly across the desolate field, a haunting symphony of suffering. Hear the soft, rhythmic crunch of hobnailed boots on the blood-soaked mud as a solitary figure moved purposefully among the fallen. See the glint of a sharpened blade raised high, its cold steel reflecting the last, fading light of the sun. A soldier moves among the fallen, blade raised, ending pain or silencing witnesses. This was the grim, unenviable task of the mercy blow. For his own comrades, gravely wounded and beyond hope of recovery, it was an act of brutal compassion. A swift, clean blow to the head or heart, delivered with a hardened resolve, brought a merciful end to agonizing suffering, preventing a slow, lingering death from cold, exposure, or further predation. But the mercy blow also served a more chilling, utilitarian purpose. For gravely wounded enemy soldiers who might linger for hours, their suffering could serve as a grim warning to any who might observe. But they could also be witnesses carrying back intelligence about the victor's numbers or disposition. A silent blade, a swift end, ensured there were no lingering witnesses to the true cost of defeat. The act itself was performed with a cold, impersonal efficiency, born of battle-hardened minds and the brutal realities of medieval warfare. There was no room for sentimentality, no time for hesitation. It was a pragmatic decision made under the immense psychological burden of the battlefield, blurring the lines between mercy and murder. The psychological impact on the soldier performing such an act was profound. It was a chilling reminder of the inherent brutality of their profession, the ultimate dehumanization of the enemy, the moral compromises demanded by survival. The memory of the dying faces, the final moans, would haunt their sleep for nights to come. A soldier moves among the fallen, blade raised, ending pain, or silencing witnesses. The mercy blow was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the aftermath into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound moral ambiguity. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized death. Its final act, a profound statement of brutality or desperate compassion. The spoils of war. As the grim work of the mercy blow concluded and the sun began its final descent over the carnage of the medieval battlefield, a different, more primal urge took hold among the victorious. The spoils of war were a brutal, pervasive reality. Victory meant scavenging, a belt, a coin, a pair of boots that still fit, transforming the horrors of combat into a desperate utilitarian economy, a silent testament to the constant scarcity of medieval life and the cold, unromanticized pursuit of personal gain amidst profound human suffering. Imagine the air, heavy with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by the movements of countless men. The sounds were no longer the low moans of the dying. They included the rustle of clothes being stripped, the soft clink of metal, and the hushed whispers of men searching intently. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now mingled with the lingering stench of death, obscured individual horrors in a haze of grim efficiency. The battle was over. For the victorious common soldiers, particularly the foot soldiers and men-at-arms, the opportunity to plunder the fallen enemy was a brutal, yet often necessary, reward. Their pay was meagre, their possessions few, and the battlefield offered a rare chance to acquire items that could improve their own precarious lives, or be bartered for precious food and drink. Listen to the low murmur of men, their voices hushed, moving quickly, almost furtively, among the fallen bodies. Hear the rustle of clothes being stripped, the soft clink of metal as a buckle was unfastened, a pouch removed. See the figures hunched over bodies, their faces grimly focused, their hands working swiftly, efficiently, searching for any item of value. Victory meant scavenging, a belt, a coin, a pair of boots that still fit. Every item of clothing, every piece of armor, every personal possession of the dead was a potential prize. A sturdy leather belt, a small pouch containing a few precious coins, a serviceable pair of boots that still fit, a warm cloak, a functional dagger. These were immensely valuable in a world of constant scarcity. They could be used, sold, or bartered, improving the quality of a soldier's life or helping his family. The irony was chilling. The men they plundered were often just like them. Common soldiers, peasants, conscripted into war, fighting for their own lord. But in the brutal aftermath of battle, these distinctions vanished. The dead became commodities, their possessions a grim harvest. The psychological impact on the scavengers was immense. To strip the clothes from a recently dead man, to pry a coin from his cold fingers, to claim his boots. These were acts that desensitized, that blurred the lines between humanity and cold utility. It was a chilling reminder of the value of life and its swift, brutal diminishment. The field, once a canvas for martial glory, was now a marketplace of the dead, its grim economy driven by the cold calculus of survival. The mud, thick with blood, coated everything, slowly claiming the fallen, burying the evidence of their brutal end. Victory means scavenging, a belt, a coin, a pair of boots that still fit. The spoils of war was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the immediate aftermath into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound moral ambiguity. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its possessions becoming a desperate utilitarian prize in the brutal economy of war. The burial pit. As the grim work of scavenging concluded and the chill of night began to settle over the carnage of the medieval battlefield, a final, horrifying task awaited the victors. The burial pit was a chilling, pervasive reality. They dig fast, not for honor, but because the smell comes quickly, transforming the final rites into a desperate, hurried act, a grim testament to the overwhelming scale of death and the profound indignity of a brutal, unromanticized end for the countless fallen. Imagine the air, heavy with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of battle, and the pervasive aroma of human despair, now mingled with the cloying, inescapable smell of death itself. The sounds were no longer the low moans of the dying. They included the rhythmic scrape of shovels against earth, the low grunts of exhausted men, and the profound, almost eerie silence of a landscape transformed into a vast, open grave. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the broken bodies, obscured individual horrors in a haze of grim efficiency. Thousands of men and horses lay scattered across the battlefield, their bodies twisted and broken. While the victorious dead might receive individual burials or be taken back to their homes, the vast majority of the fallen, particularly the enemy dead, and the poorest common soldiers, received no such dignity. They were simply too numerous and the task too grim for proper interment. Listen to the rhythmic scrape of shovels against the earth, a ceaseless, monotonous sound that echoed in the profound stillness of the night. Hear the low grunts of exhausted men, their bodies aching from battle and the arduous labor, toiling in the dim light of torches. See the vast, dark pits hastily dug into the churned, blood-soaked mud, their gaping mouths ready to receive hundreds of bodies. They dig fast, not for honor, but because the smell comes quickly. The urgency of the task was dictated not by reverence for the dead, but by profound practicality and the grim realities of hygiene. In warmer weather, bodies would decompose rapidly, attracting disease, polluting the camp, and creating an unbearable stench. Even in cold, the smell of death, metallic and cloying, quickly permeated the air. Bodies, often stripped of their armor and valuables, the spoils of war, would be unceremoniously thrown into these mass graves. There were no individual shrouds, no solemn prayers for each fallen soul. The bodies would simply be piled in, limb over limb, an anonymous tangle of human remains, covered quickly with earth and mud. The psychological impact on the soldiers performing this grim task was immense. To witness such widespread death, to handle the bodies of the recently slain, to bury their enemies and often their own comrades in such an undignified manner, these acts desensitized, traumatized, and left an indelible mark on their souls. It was a chilling reminder of the inherent brutality of their profession, the ultimate dehumanization of the enemy, and the profound indifference of war to individual lives. The field, once a canvas for martial glory, was now a vast open grave. The mud, thick with blood and the remnants of battle, covered everything, slowly claiming the fallen, burying the evidence of their brutal end. They dig fast, not for honor, but because the smell comes quickly. The burial pit was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the final rites into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of death and the grim reality of an unromanticized, anonymous end. The warrior's world, the code of courage. In the brutal, unforgiving world of medieval warfare, where death lurked in every clash of iron and honor, was a fiercely guarded currency, the ideals of chivalry often collided with the raw realities of survival. The code of courage was a complex, often contradictory force. They speak of valor, but courage often means refusing to run, transforming a noble virtue into a grim imperative, a desperate, disciplined defiance against overwhelming fear, shaping every warrior's actions and defining their very soul on the medieval battlefield. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by thousands of struggling feet. The sounds were no longer the deafening clang of steel. They included the desperate cries of the wounded, the guttural shouts of men, and the profound, almost eerie silence that fell over a moment of profound decision. Flickering torchlight over dented helmets illuminated faces etched with grim determination and profound apprehension. From his earliest training as a page and squire, a knight was meticulously indoctrinated into the code of chivalry, a complex set of ideals that emphasized valor, loyalty, honor, and courtesy. Courage was at its very core the supreme virtue for a warrior. To be brave, to face the enemy unflinchingly, to protect the weak. These were the tenets preached in court and sung by minstrels. Listen to the low murmur of men in the waiting line, their voices hushed, their prayers desperate, yet their bodies rigid with resolve. Hear the piercing blare of the trumpet, signaling the charge, a sound that unleashed a torrent of adrenaline, transforming raw fear into a desperate, focused resolve. See the long, rigid lines of knights, their armor gleaming, their lances lowered, moving towards the enemy, a profound act of collective will. They speak of valor, but courage often means refusing to run. On the battlefield, the romanticized ideal of valor, of heroic charges and glorious single combat, often dissolved into the grim reality of chaos, exhaustion, and overwhelming terror. True courage was not always about a dramatic, triumphant act. It was often about the sheer, unwavering refusal to abandon one's position, to hold the line, to continue fighting when every instinct screamed for flight. The fear was immense, primal. The sight of the enemy, the roar of battle, the gruesome sounds of death, these pushed men to the absolute limits of their endurance. To remain in the thick of combat, to continue wielding one's weapon, to stand firm when comrades fell around you. This required a profound, almost superhuman act of will, a desperate defiance of the instinct for self-preservation. Refusing to run was paramount. A knight, by his oath, was bound to his lord, to his comrades, to his code of honor. To flee the field was the ultimate disgrace, a profound act of cowardice that would bring shame not just upon himself, but upon his family, his lineage, his entire house. The psychological burden of this potential dishonor was as powerful a motivator as any physical threat. The code of courage was a constant internal struggle, fought in silence within the confines of each warrior's mind. It was the battle against one's own fear, against one's own body's desperate urge to survive. And the triumph, however grim, was in the unwavering resolve to stand firm, to fight on, to endure. They speak of valor, but courage often means refusing to run. The code of courage was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the noble ideal of chivalry into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound psychological pressure. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of fear, where true valor was simply the refusal to yield. The knight's mask. In the brutal, unforgiving crucible of the medieval battlefield, where death lurked in every clash of iron and glory, was a fleeting, often illusory promise. The knight's true identity was often obscured. The knight's mask was a profound, chilling reality. Under the visor, there's no hero, only breath, sweat, and the fear of dying unseen, transforming the noble ideal into a stark, visceral experience of vulnerability, anonymity, and the pervasive, dehumanizing terror of medieval combat. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the suffocating dust kicked up by thousands of struggling feet. The sounds were no longer the triumphant blare of trumpets. They included the deafening clang of steel on steel, the splintering crack of wood, the guttural shouts of men, and the desperate, horrifying screams of the wounded. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now mingled with the chaos of combat, obscured individual horrors in a haze of brutal, indiscriminate violence. The knight's helmet, whether a conical bassinet, a great helm, or later a full enclosed visor, was his primary protection in battle. It shielded his head, his most vulnerable point, from devastating blows. But in doing so, it also transformed his identity, turning him into an anonymous figure of war, a faceless combatant. Listen to the muffled, ragged breathing of the knight within his helmet, the sound amplified by the enclosed space, a visceral reminder of his own desperate struggle for air. Hear the ceaseless clang of steel on steel, reverberating through the metal, deafening his ears, overwhelming his senses. See the narrow slit of the visor, providing a limited, fragmented view of the chaotic battlefield, transforming the world into a bewildering maelstrom of violence. Under the visor, there's no hero, only breath, sweat, and the fear of dying unseen. The romanticized image of the heroic knight, performing acts of individual valor, often dissolved under the visor. Here, in the suffocating confines of the helmet, there was only the raw, visceral reality of a man struggling for survival. His breath, hot and heavy, mingled with the acrid scent of his own sweat, and the profound, chilling terror of dying anonymously, unseen, unheard, a mere casualty among thousands. The restricted vision, the muffled sounds, the oppressive heat within the helmet, these combined to disorient, to isolate, to dehumanize. A knight could fight and die without his face ever being seen by his enemy, or even by many of his comrades. His personal identity, his noble lineage, his individual courage, all were subsumed by the anonymous mask of war. The fear of dying unseen was profound. In a society obsessed with honor and reputation, to die without witness, without recognition, without a proper burial, was a chilling prospect. It denied him the posthumous glory he sought, the remembrance that cemented his place in the annals of chivalry. The psychological impact was immense. The helmet, while protecting his life, also stripped him of his individuality, forcing him to confront the grim reality of his own mortality in a profoundly impersonal way. It was a constant internal struggle against the dehumanizing forces of war. Under the visor, there's no hero, only breath, sweat, and the fear of dying unseen. The knight's mask was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the noble ideal into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound psychological pressure. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized, anonymous death, its scars etched into the very soul beneath the steel. The campfire lies. After the brutal, dehumanizing chaos of the medieval battlefield, when the clang of iron faded and the grim work of burying the dead was done, a different, more human ritual took hold in the dark, temporary camps. The campfire lies were a poignant, necessary illusion. At night, they laugh and drink, pretending the next dawn will be kinder, transforming profound trauma into a fragile, communal solace, a desperate attempt to create an illusion of peace and camaraderie against the overwhelming reality of war's brutal truth. Imagine the air, thick with the pungent aroma of wood smoke, mingling with the earthy scent of damp ground, stale ale, and the subtle tang of human presence. The sounds were no longer the desperate cries of the wounded. They included the low murmur of hushed conversation, the clink of crude drinking cups, and the forced, sometimes genuine, laughter of weary men. Campfires glowing in the blackness of night, casting dancing shadows, illuminated faces softened by shared warmth and unspoken understanding. After the horrors of battle, after the grim work of scavenging and burying the dead, the soldiers would gather around their campfires. These were temporary oases of warmth and light in a world still permeated by darkness and the lingering stench of death. Here, the rigid discipline of the day would subtly ease, allowing for a fragile, temporary return to something resembling humanity. Listen to the low murmur of voices recounting tales of the day's battle, the bravery of a fallen comrade, the ferocity of a charge, the cunning of the enemy. Hear the clink of crude drinking cups filled with thin ale or watered wine, their contents a brief escape from the cold and the gnawing hunger. See the faces of the men, grimed with dirt and exhaustion, but momentarily softened by the flickering firelight, their expressions a mixture of weariness and forced camaraderie. At night, they laugh and drink, pretending the next dawn will be kinder. The laughter was often strained, sometimes forced, a desperate attempt to push back the profound trauma of the day's horrors. The drinking was a means to dull the pain, to numb the memories, to seek a brief oblivion from the relentless anxiety of their precarious existence. They spoke of future victories, of bountiful spoils, of a swift return home, lies they told each other and themselves to maintain a fragile hope. This ritual of fireside camaraderie was a psychological necessity. It allowed men to process the trauma, to reinforce their bonds of brotherhood, to find solace in shared experience. The stories, even if exaggerated or sanitized, helped to create a narrative that made the brutality of war somehow more palatable, more comprehensible. The pretense was crucial. To acknowledge the full horror, to voice the true fear of the next dawn, was to risk breaking the fragile morale of the group. So they pretended. They laughed, they drank, they told their lies, desperately clinging to the illusion that the next day might be different, that fate might somehow be kinder. The cold of the night, the lingering smell of death, the memory of fallen comrades. These were constant, pervasive reminders of the brutal reality. But around the campfire, for a few precious hours, the illusion held sway, a fragile shield against overwhelming despair. At night, they laugh and drink, pretending the next dawn will be kinder. The campfire lies were a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming profound trauma into a chilling testament to human resilience and psychological survival. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless nights after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of fear, where even hope was a desperate, self-deceiving act. The healer's hands. In the brutal, unforgiving world of a medieval battlefield, where combat inflicted horrific wounds and infection was a swifter killer than any sword, formal medicine was rudimentary, and its practitioners often scarce. The healer's hands were a fragile, desperate hope. Rags, honey, and hope. These were the tools of medicine in a world that barely knew mercy, transforming agonizing suffering into a grim struggle for life, a profound testament to unseen courage and desperate ingenuity amidst the pervasive horror of war. Imagine the air, thick with the metallic tang of blood, the acrid stench of sweat and fear, and the sickening aroma of infection mingled with the earthy scent of crude herbs and old linen. The sounds were no longer the deafening clang of steel. They included the low moans of the grievously wounded, the desperate cries for water, and the hushed, grim murmurs of the healer. Flickering torchlight over dented helmets illuminated faces etched with profound pain and desperate hope. The medieval battlefield was a place of unparalleled trauma. Swords, axes, maces, arrows. These weapons inflicted gruesome, often lethal injuries, shattered bones, gaping wounds, severed limbs. For the vast majority of the wounded, particularly the common foot soldiers, their fate was grim. Medical aid was rudimentary, often non-existent. Listen to the low moans of the grievously wounded, their voices hoarse with pain and thirst, echoing faintly across the makeshift aid station. Hear the hushed, grim murmurs of the healer, her voice calm and focused, offering what little comfort she could. See her hands, often rough and calloused, but moving with a surprising delicacy, working over a gaping wound, her face etched with profound concentration. Rags, honey, and hope. The tools of medicine in a world that barely knew mercy. The healer, often a woman from the local village, a camp follower, or a monastic lay sister, possessed a knowledge of herbs, simple wound care, and an unwavering compassion. Her table, if she had one, would be piled with crude bandages, rags, small pots of precious honey, and bundles of dried herbs. Rags were her primary dressing material, torn strips of linen or wool used to staunch bleeding, to bind wounds, to create poultices. Honey, prized for its antiseptic properties, would be carefully applied to open wounds, a natural antibiotic in a world without them. Various herbs, known for their pain-relieving or infection-fighting qualities, would be brewed into teas or crushed into poultices. And hope, however fragile, was her most vital medicine, offered through prayers, blessings, and simple human touch. The challenge was immense. Infection, swift and merciless, was the greatest killer, often claiming lives days after a wound had been sustained. Gangrene, fever, and sepsis were rampant. The conditions were unsanitary, water scarce, and the numbers of wounded overwhelming. The psychological impact on the healer was profound. Faced with overwhelming suffering, with the futility of many of her remedies, she nonetheless continued her grim work, driven by compassion and an unwavering sense of duty, offering what little comfort she could, even when cure was impossible. Rags, honey, and hope. The tools of medicine in a world that barely knew mercy. The healer's hands were a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming profound trauma into a chilling testament to human suffering and desperate ingenuity. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized death. Its fragile hope clung to the tender, knowing touch of a healer's hands. The letter home. In the brutal, isolating world of the medieval battlefield, where death was ever present and communication with the outside world was tenuous at best, a soldier's connection to home was a fragile, precious thread. The letter home was a rare, poignant act. If ink could still be found, they would write a few words no one would ever read, transforming desperate longing into a silent, deeply personal testament to enduring love, fear, and the profound, often unfulfilled, hope of return, a quiet echo of the human spirit amidst the overwhelming glory and horror of war. Imagine the air inside a crude, smoky tent, thick with the pungent aroma of wood smoke, damp canvas, and the subtle tang of human presence, now mingled with the earthy scent of cheap parchment and the faint aroma of ink. The sounds were no longer the low murmur of campfire lies. They included the rhythmic scratch of a quill, the soft rustle of parchment, and the gentle breathing of a man lost in thought. Campfires glowing in the blackness of night, casting dancing shadows, illuminated a soldier's face, etched with weariness and profound longing. For the vast majority of medieval soldiers, literacy was a rare skill. Most common foot soldiers could neither read nor write. Even for knights, while literacy was more common, the act of writing was often left to scribes or clerics who accompanied the army. But in the quiet moments between battles, in the long, cold nights far from home, the yearning for connection was immense. Listen to the rhythmic scratch of a quill on rough parchment, a precise, deliberate sound in the hushed tent, as a soldier or a scribe on his behalf carefully formed letters. Hear the soft rustle of the parchment, its cheap, rough texture, a stark contrast to the fine vellum of noble charters. See the flickering lamplight illuminating the grim face of the soldier, his brow furrowed in concentration, choosing each precious word with immense care. If ink can still be found, they write a few words no one will ever read. Ink, parchment, and the time for writing were all scarce commodities on campaign. The words, painstakingly chosen, would be brief: a message of love to a wife, a reassurance to children, a blessing for an aging parent. They would speak of enduring loyalty, of fervent prayers for their family's well-being, of the desperate hope for a safe return. But the crushing reality was that often no one would ever read them. The journey home, entrusted to a returning comrade or a passing merchant, was fraught with peril. Messengers could be robbed, letters lost, carriers killed. The soldier knew implicitly that his words might never reach their intended recipient, that his last declaration of love or hope might vanish into the dust of the campaign. The psychological impact was immense. To pour one's heart onto a piece of parchment, to articulate one's deepest fears and longings, knowing it might be a futile gesture, was an act of profound vulnerability. It was a desperate attempt to maintain a connection, however tenuous, to the world he fought for, the world he longed to return to. The letter home was a poignant paradox, a public act of private yearning, a tangible piece of love and fear sent into an uncertain future. It was a desperate hope against overwhelming odds, a silent testament to the enduring human need for connection, even in the brutal, dehumanizing chaos of medieval warfare. If ink can still be found, they write a few words no one will ever read. The letter home was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming profound trauma into a chilling testament to human endurance and profound psychological pressure. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of a love often lost. Its words a haunting echo of unspoken farewells. The lords and the lost, the feast after the battle. As the grim work of burying the dead concluded and the immediate horror of the medieval battlefield receded, two profoundly different realities unfolded across the landscape. The feast after the battle was a chilling, pervasive contrast. The lords dine while the peasants bury their dead, both with shaking hands, transforming military triumph into a stark spectacle of social inequality, revealing the immense human cost of glory and underscoring the enduring chasm between those who commanded and those who sacrificed. Imagine the air thick with the rich aroma of roasted meats, fragrant spices and fine wines, mingling with the lingering scent of damp earth and the subtle, acrid tang of distant battlefields. The sounds were no longer the low moans of the dying. They included the boisterous laughter of victorious nobles, the clink of silver goblets, and the solemn murmur of distant prayers. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the bodies of the unburied, obscured the grim reality from those within the castle walls. Within the great hall of the victorious lord's castle, far from the carnage of the battlefield, a lavish feast would commence. This was a celebration of triumph, a reward for courage, a display of power and wealth. Knights, nobles, and their retinue would recline on gilded benches, feasting on abundant food, drinking copious amounts of wine and ale, their faces flushed with victory and revelry. Listen to the boisterous laughter of victorious nobles, their voices echoing through the vast hall, celebrating their triumph. Hear the clink of silver goblets, the tinkle of lute music, the loud recounting of heroic deeds. See the long, heavy tables laden with vast quantities of roasted fowl, succulent meats, fresh bread, and sweet pastries. A dazzling display of abundance and indulgence. The lords dine while the peasants bury their dead, both with shaking hands. Outside the castle walls, in the muddy fields where the battle had raged, the peasants, conscripted or simply ordered to perform the grim task, would be engaged in the agonizing labor of burying the dead. Their hands, calloused and rough, would shake not from revelry, but from exhaustion, from cold, from profound grief, and from the psychological trauma of handling so many lifeless bodies. Their meal, if any, would be meager. A piece of black bread, a thin gruel, consumed in grim silence by the flickering light of torches amidst the lingering stench of death. Their shaking hands, digging into the cold, hard earth, were a profound counterpoint to the celebratory indulgence within the castle. The psychological impact was immense. The stark contrast between the lavish feast and the gruesome burial, between the joy of the victors and the suffering of the laborers, was a chilling reminder of the rigid social hierarchy. It underscored the profound chasm between those who commanded the wars and those who paid the ultimate price, both in life and in labor. The memory of the battle, its horrors, its human cost, would be swiftly sanitized, romanticized, transformed into heroic tales for the lord's entertainment. But for the peasants, burying their dead The grim reality of blood and mud, of broken bodies and shattered lives, would be an indelible memory passed down in hushed whispers. The lords dine while the peasants bury their dead, both with shaking hands. The feast after the battle was a pervasive, fundamental reality of medieval warfare, transforming the aftermath of combat into a chilling testament to social inequality and profound injustice. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of a brutal, unromanticized death, its human cost paid by the forgotten, anonymous dead. The cost of glory. In the glittering, brutal world of medieval warfare, where victory was celebrated with lavish feasts and minstrels sang of heroic deeds, the true cost of glory was rarely acknowledged, particularly by those who commanded from stone castles. The cost of glory was a profound, unspoken reality. A horse, S-armor, costs more than a dozen lives, and the math never balances, transforming the romanticized ideals of chivalry into a cold, utilitarian calculus of wealth and expendability, highlighting the immense human and economic toll hidden beneath the banners of triumph. Imagine the air, thick with the rich aroma of polished leather, gleaming steel, and expensive fabrics mingling with the pervasive scent of old stone and lingering ambition. The sounds were no longer the low moans of the dying. They included the rhythmic clang of smiths shaping metal, the hushed murmurs of armourers, and the distant, almost ceremonial music of a lord's hall. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the graves of the forgotten, obscured the grim reality from those within the castle walls. For the nobility and wealthy knights, warfare was an expensive endeavour. Horses, particularly the large, powerful war horses, destriers, were immensely valuable. Their training, their feeding, and above all their armour represented a colossal investment, often exceeding the lifetime earnings of dozens of peasants. Listen to the rhythmic clang of smiths' hammers, meticulously shaping plates of steel, forging intricate pieces of barding, horse armour. Hear the hushed murmurs of armourers discussing the quality of the metal, the precision of the fit, the cost of the materials. See the gleaming, polished pieces of horse armour, the chanfron for the head, the crinière for the neck, the pétrole for the chest, each piece a work of art, a testament to immense wealth and craftsmanship. A horse's armour costs more than a dozen lives, and the math never balances. A full suit of high-quality barding could cost more than a dozen, perhaps even a score, of peasant lives were valued in terms of labour and subsistence. The life of a common foot soldier, a peasant conscripted into war, was often considered cheap, expendable, a mere numerical casualty in the pursuit of glory. The cold, utilitarian calculus was stark. To protect a valuable warhorse, to ensure its survival in battle, was a financially sound investment for a lord. The lives of the foot soldiers, meanwhile, were largely uncounted, unmourned, their deaths often dismissed as a necessary cost of conflict. Their families, left destitute, received no compensation, no acknowledgement of their profound loss. The psychological impact of this stark disparity was immense. For the common soldier, it underscored their profound expendability, their insignificance in the grand scheme of feudal warfare. For the peasant families, it bred resentment, deepened despair, and highlighted the brutal injustice of a system that valued property over human life. The glorification of war, sung by minstrels in the Lord's Hall, swiftly omitted these grim realities. The heroic tales focused on the noble knights, their gleaming armour, their valiant charges, their pursuit of honour. The anonymous dead, the countless fallen foot soldiers, were simply forgotten, their suffering absorbed by the muddy fields of battle. A horse's armor costs more than a dozen lives, and the math never balances. The cost of glory was a pervasive, fundamental reality of medieval warfare, transforming military triumph into a chilling testament to social inequality and profound injustice. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized death. Its human cost paid by the forgotten, anonymous dead, whose lives were worth less than steel and leather. The minstrel's tale. In the grand, often smoke-filled halls of a medieval castle, where the triumphant din of victory feasts still resonated, the brutal realities of the battlefield were swiftly, deliberately sanitized. The minstrel's tale was a masterclass in illusion. In the safety of the hall, the songs forget the screams, transforming the horrific chaos of combat into a romanticized narrative of chivalry, courage, and glory, an unspoken code that reshaped memory, offered solace to the living, and buried the true horror beneath a glittering veil of poetic license. Imagine the air, thick with the rich aroma of roasted meats, fragrant spices, and fine wines, mingling with the subtle scent of beeswax from countless candles. The sounds were no longer the clash of swords. They included the gentle plucking of a lute, the soaring voice of a minstrel, and the hushed murmurs of an enraptured audience. Sunlight glinting off polished armor, reflected in gleaming silver, illuminated a dazzling, yet rigidly ordered display of courtly life. After a battle, particularly a victorious one, the Lord's Hall would become a center of celebration. Knights, nobles, and their retinue would gather, feasting on abundant food, drinking copious amounts of wine and ale. Amidst this revelry, the minstrel, a skilled poet and musician, would take center stage, his task to entertain, to praise, and to commemorate. Listen to the gentle plucking of the lute, its melodic notes filling the hall, creating a soothing backdrop for the narrative. Hear the soaring, resonant voice of the minstrel, recounting tales of chivalry, of valiant knights, of heroic deeds, of a glorious victory achieved against formidable odds. See the faces of the audience, their eyes bright with pride and a sense of shared triumph, their expressions reflecting the romanticized imagery conjured by the song. In the safety of the hall, the songs forget the screams. The minstrel's tale was a deliberate act of historical revisionism, a profound act of forgetting. The grim realities of the battlefield, the deafening clang of steel, the sickening cries of the wounded, the splintering of shields, the crushing weight of bodies in mud, the acrid stench of blood and fear. These were entirely absent from his eloquent verses. They were replaced by soaring rhetoric, by idealized portrayals of courage, by the glory of individual combat. The anonymous dead, the common foot soldiers who perished in their thousands, their bodies rotting in unmarked burial pits, were rarely mentioned. The true cost of glory, the immense human suffering, the shattered lives, the devastated families, was swiftly omitted. The narrative focused solely on the triumph of the Lord, the valor of his knights, and the divine favor that granted victory. The psychological impact was immense. For the surviving knights, the minstrel's tale offered a form of emotional purification, transforming their traumatic memories into a more palatable, heroic narrative. For the nobles, it reinforced their pride, their legitimacy, their belief in the righteousness of their cause. For the audience, it instilled a sense of patriotic fervor, a belief in the inherent glory of war. The minstrel's tale was a powerful tool of propaganda, shaping collective memory, constructing a sanitized version of history that served the interests of the powerful. It ensured that the quiet horror beneath the glory of war remained buried, unspoken, unremembered. In the safety of the hall, the songs forget the screams. The minstrel's tale was a pervasive, fundamental reality of medieval warfare, transforming the brutal aftermath of combat into a chilling testament to the power of narrative and the profound manipulation of memory. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of sanitized triumph and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its true cost buried beneath the melodious lies. The Widow's Watch. While the lords celebrated their victories with feasts and minstrels sang of glorious deeds far from the castle halls, in the humble, often cold, cottages of the village, the true, enduring cost of war played out in profound, silent grief. The Widow's Watch was a poignant, pervasive reality. By the hearth, a candle burns low. She waits for someone who won't return, transforming desperate hope into the slow, agonizing certainty of loss, a chilling testament to the invisible scars left by the glory of war and the enduring strength of those left behind. Imagine the air inside a small, mud-daubed hut, thick with the earthy scent of wood smoke, damp straw, and the subtle tang of human presence, now permeated by the profound stillness of absence and unspoken sorrow. The sounds were no longer the festive notes of a lute. They included the soft crackle of a dwindling fire, the gentle breathing of sleeping children, and the low murmur of a woman's desperate, internal vigil. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the graves of the forgotten, obscured the grim reality from her pained gaze. Her husband, a common foot soldier, a peasant, conscripted into the Lord's army, had marched away weeks or months ago, his form disappearing into the horizon with the legions. He had promised to return, to work the fields, to tend the hearth, to father more children. She had clung to that promise, nurtured that hope, even as the cold of winter set in, even as rumors of distant battles drifted back to the village. Listen to the soft crackle of a dwindling fire, its warmth fading, its light receding, mirroring the slow diminishment of her hope. Hear the gentle breathing of her sleeping children, their small, fragile forms nestled close, their innocence a painful contrast to her own profound awareness. See the single tallow candle, its flame burning low on the hearth, a tiny, defiant beacon in the overwhelming darkness, its light flickering with every subtle draught. By the hearth, a candle burns low. She waits for someone who won't return. Night after night, she would maintain this vigil. As her children succumbed to sleep, she would sit by the hearth, her gaze fixed on the flickering candle flame, her mind consumed by thoughts of her husband. Had he survived the battle? Was he wounded? Was he marching home, even now? Each flicker of the flame was a tiny spark of hope, each diminution a profound dread. The candle, a precious commodity, was a symbol of her unwavering faith, her enduring love, her desperate hope. It was kept burning as long as possible, a symbolic link to the absent one, a visible declaration that she still waited, still believed. But as the winter deepened, as the days bled into weeks and months, and no news arrived, hope would slowly wither, replaced by the cold, agonizing certainty of loss. The truth would eventually settle. He was not returning. He was among the anonymous dead, one of the countless lost, whose bodies lay unburied in a distant, muddy field, or in a mass grave, his life a casualty in the Lord's pursuit of glory. His promise, like the candle, had burned down, leaving only darkness and an immense, aching void. The psychological impact was immense. Grief, raw and personal, mingled with a profound sense of despair, of a future shattered. The burden of raising her children alone, of working the fields without her husband's strength, of enduring the long, lean winters without his warmth and protection. This was the harsh reality of her widow, Eswinter. By the hearth, a candle burns low. She waits for someone who won't return. The widow's watch was a pervasive, fundamental reality of medieval warfare, transforming the brutal aftermath of combat into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless nights after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its human cost paid by the profound, enduring sorrow of those left behind. The King's Prayer. While the widows wept by their hearths and the anonymous dead lay forgotten in muddy pits, far removed from the brutal realities of the battlefield, in the gilded halls of a distant castle, another, more subtle, drama unfolded. The King's Prayer was a profound, chilling paradox. Even the crowned whisper to the dark, asking forgiveness for their own survival, transforming supreme power into a moment of profound spiritual vulnerability, a silent reckoning with the immense human cost of their ambition and the terrifying weight of their divinely ordained, yet often bloody, authority. Imagine the air, thick with the subtle scent of beeswax from countless candles, rare perfumes, and the lingering aroma of incense, mingling with the pervasive scent of old stone and unspoken guilt. The sounds were no longer the boisterous laughter of a victory feast. They included the solemn murmur of a monarch's voice, the soft rustle of silk robes, and the profound, almost oppressive silence of a private chapel. Moonlight falling on broken amphitheatres, now reflected in the cold, stained glass windows of a castle chapel, illuminated a figure bowed in solitude. The king, enthroned in his majestic castle, had commanded armies, orchestrated battles, and claimed victory, often at immense human cost. His power was absolute, his will supreme, his glory celebrated by minstrels and chroniclers. Yet, even for a monarch whose authority was believed to be divinely ordained, the weight of such responsibility, the reality of so much death, could not be entirely ignored. Listen to the low, solemn murmur of the king's voice, his words barely audible, reciting ancient prayers, pleas for divine mercy, requests for guidance. Hear the soft rustle of his rich silk robes as he knelt before a gilded altar, his body, though physically powerful, now bowed in profound humility. See the flickering candlelight, casting dancing shadows on his regal face, etched with a mixture of weariness, profound responsibility, and a subtle, pervasive guilt. Even the crowned whisper to the dark, asking forgiveness for their own survival. In the privacy of his chapel, or in the silent confines of his bedchamber, after the feasts and celebrations had ended, the king would confront the grim reality of his decisions. He had survived. His family, his court, his kingdom had survived. But countless thousands had perished at his command, for his ambition, for his glory. His prayer was often a desperate plea for forgiveness, for the lives lost, for the suffering inflicted, for the moral compromises made in the pursuit of power. He would ask for divine mercy, not just for himself, but for the souls of the fallen, for the grieving widows and orphans left in his wake. It was a profound act of spiritual vulnerability, a silent reckoning with the immense human cost of his reign. The darkness of the night, the profound solitude, amplified these moments of introspection. The weight of his crown, a symbol of immense power, now felt like a heavy burden on his soul. The glory of victory, so celebrated in song, was now tinged with the cold, hard reality of death and suffering. This was a private battle, fought in silence, within the confines of his own conscience. The true cost of glory, so often obscured by triumphant narratives, was revealed in the king's solitary prayer, a testament to the profound psychological burden of leadership in a brutal age. Even the crowned whisper to the dark, asking forgiveness for their own survival. The king's prayer was a pervasive, fundamental reality in the aftermath of medieval warfare, transforming supreme power into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound moral reckoning. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of command and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its human cost echoing in the whispered prayers of a troubled king. Silence. After the storm. The battlefield at dawn. After the long, brutal night, when the clamor of battle had faded and the grim work of burying the dead was concluded, a profound transformation occurred over the field of carnage. The battlefield at dawn was a haunting, ethereal reality. Mist covers the ground like a burial shroud. The world reborn, but quieter now, a profound, unsettling stillness that spoke of immense loss, of lives extinguished, and the subtle, chilling echoes of human suffering lingering in the cold, damp air. Imagine the air, sharp and brutal, stealing your breath, thick with the metallic tang of dried blood, the earthy scent of churned soil, and the subtle aroma of cold, damp mist. The sounds were no longer the low moans of the dying. They included the distant caw of crows, the soft rustle of wet grass, and the profound, almost eerie silence that clung to a landscape soaked in human tragedy. Mist covers the ground like a burial shroud, obscuring individual horrors in a haze of profound desolation. The battle was over. The triumphant cries of the victors, the desperate screams of the defeated, all had ceased. The darkness of night, which had hidden the true scale of the carnage, slowly began to recede, revealing a landscape utterly transformed by violence and death. Listen to the distant, mournful caw of crows, their harsh cries a grim lament, circling high above the carnage, already sensing their gruesome feast. Hear the soft rustle of wet grass, disturbed by the subtle shift of a scavenging animal, its movements a grim counterpoint to the stillness. See the vast, muddy expanse, now littered with thousands of broken bodies, men, horses, their forms grotesquely twisted, their armor dented, their weapons scattered, visible now in the pale, diffused light. Mist covers the ground like a burial shroud. A thick, ethereal blanket of morning mist would often rise from the damp, churned earth, shrouding the battlefield in a ghostly veil. It clung low to the ground, obscuring the gruesome details of the carnage, transforming the landscape into a dreamlike, spectral realm. The mist seemed to rise from the very bodies of the fallen, a chilling exhalation of countless extinguished lives, the world reborn, but quieter now. The sun, a weak, indifferent eye, would slowly begin its ascent, its pale light struggling to penetrate the thick mist. It illuminated a world reborn, yes, but one profoundly, irrevocably altered. The vibrant clamor of life, the natural sounds of the landscape, were muted, replaced by an eerie stillness, a profound quietude that spoke of immense, collective loss. The psychological impact on any survivors, on those tasked with returning to this sacred, yet horrifying ground, was immense. The mist, the silence, the sheer scale of the carnage, these combined to engrave an indelible memory of horror, eroding any lingering illusions of glory. The pervasive stillness seemed to hold the echoes of past screams, of desperate cries, a haunting reminder of the violence that had unfolded. The battlefield at dawn was a pervasive, fundamental reality after medieval warfare, transforming the sight of carnage into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory, and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its scars etched into the very earth, shrouded in the silence after the storm. The forgotten names. As the morning mist drifted like a burial shroud over the silent, broken bodies of the medieval battlefield, a grim truth asserted itself, often more profound than any individual death. The forgotten names were a pervasive, haunting legacy. The victors are remembered. The rest returned to Earth without a word, transforming countless lives into anonymous statistics, an unspoken code that dictated whose story would be told and whose would be utterly erased. A chilling testament to the brutal selectivity of history and the immense, quiet horror beneath the glory. Imagine the air, sharp and brutal, stealing your breath, thick with the metallic tang of dried blood, the earthy scent of churned soil, and the subtle aroma of cold, damp mist. The sounds were no longer the distant call of crows alone. They included the low moans of the dying, the soft rustle of scavenging animals, and the profound, almost eerie silence that clung to a landscape soaked in human suffering, fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the broken bodies, obscured individual horrors in a haze of profound desolation. History, particularly medieval history, was largely the story of the powerful. Kings, nobles, knights. These were the figures whose names were recorded in chronicles, whose deeds were celebrated by minstrels, whose monuments stood for centuries. Their victories, their glory, their lineage, these were meticulously preserved. Listen to the low moans of the dying, their voices hoarse with pain and thirst, echoing faintly across the desolate field, their names unspoken, unremembered. Hear the soft rustle of scavenging animals, their movements a grim counterpoint to the stillness. See the vast, muddy expanse now littered with thousands of broken bodies, men, horses, their forms grotesquely twisted, their armor dented, their weapons scattered. The victors are remembered. The triumphant generals, the valiant knights, the kings who commanded the armies, their names were inscribed in victory rolls, their exploits immortalized in song and story, their individual courage, their strategic genius, their pursuit of glory. These became the narratives that shaped the collective memory. The rest returned to Earth without a word. For the vast majority of the fallen, the common foot soldiers, the peasants conscripted into war, the countless nameless men who made up the bulk of the armies, their names were forgotten. Their lives, however brief, however brutal, however courageous, were not deemed worthy of individual remembrance. They were simply numbers, casualties in a grand narrative that did not include their personal stories. Their bodies, often stripped of their armor and valuables, would be unceremoniously thrown into mass burial pits, or simply left on the field to be consumed by scavengers or slowly absorbed by the earth. There were no individual markers, no solemn prayers for each fallen soul. Their very existence was erased, their sacrifices absorbed into the anonymity of the ground. The psychological impact on the survivors, on those tasked with burying the dead, was immense. The knowledge that their comrades, their friends, their own family members, if they were common soldiers, would simply disappear from the official record, their names forgotten, was a chilling reminder of their own expendability. It eroded any lingering illusions of personal glory, revealing the harsh, brutal truth of their place in the world. The battlefield at dawn was a pervasive, fundamental reality after medieval warfare, transforming the site of carnage into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of an unromanticized death. Its anonymous victims lost to the silent, selective judgment of history. The rusting sword. As the mist drifted like a burial shroud over the silent, broken bodies of the medieval battlefield, and the names of the fallen vanished into anonymity, the stark reality of what remained became a poignant testament to the fleeting nature of martial glory. The rusting sword was a chilling, pervasive legacy, once a symbol of pride, now a relic sinking into mud and memory, transforming a powerful emblem of chivalry into a grim reminder of decay, the futility of violence, and the ultimate, indifferent triumph of nature over human ambition. Imagine the air, sharp and brutal, stealing your breath, thick with the metallic tang of dried blood, the earthy scent of churned soil, and the subtle aroma of cold, damp mist. The sounds were no longer the distant clang of steel. They included the soft rustle of scavenging animals, the low moan of wind across the dead, and the profound, almost eerie silence that clung to a landscape soaked in human tragedy. Fog drifting through ruined fields, now clinging to the broken bodies, obscured individual horrors in a haze of profound desolation. The sword, for a medieval knight or a soldier, was far more than a mere weapon. It was an extension of his soul, a symbol of his honor, his fealty, his martial prowess, and his very identity. It was consecrated by the Church, wielded with pride in battle, meticulously cared for in times of peace. Its gleaming steel, its sharpened edge, its intricate hilt, these were objects of profound reverence. Listen to the low moan of wind across the dead, a desolate sound that seemed to carry the echoes of countless vanished lives. Hear the soft rustle of scavenging animals, their movements a grim counterpoint to the stillness. See the battlefield littered with the detritus of combat, shattered shields, dented helmets, broken lances, and amidst them, lying half buried in the thick, blood-soaked mud, the dark, unglamorous form of a sword, once a symbol of pride, now a relic sinking into mud and memory. The sword, once gleaming with polished steel, its blade sharp and lethal, would now be dull, caked with mud, perhaps bent or broken. Its once proud hilt might be shattered, its crossguard twisted. It lay discarded, a poignant symbol of a life abruptly ended, of a battle lost, of a glory that proved fleeting. Rust, the relentless, insidious work of time and moisture, would quickly begin to claim the steel. The metallic tang of fresh blood would give way to the earthy, acrid smell of iron oxidizing, slowly, inexorably consuming the once proud blade. It would sink deeper into the mud, its form slowly dissolving, becoming one with the earth that had absorbed so much human suffering. The psychological impact was immense. The sight of a rusting sword, a once mighty weapon reduced to a forgotten relic, was a powerful reminder of the futility of violence, the transient nature of human achievement, and the ultimate, indifferent triumph of nature over human ambition. It shattered any lingering illusions of glory, revealing the harsh, brutal truth of medieval warfare. The battlefield itself, once a stage for martial prowess, became a vast, open graveyard, its grim relics slowly being reclaimed by the earth. The rusting sword was a potent symbol of this process, a silent witness to the unromanticized reality of death and decay. Once a symbol of pride, now a relic sinking into mud and memory. The rusting sword was a pervasive, fundamental reality on a medieval battlefield, transforming the emblem of chivalry into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of combat and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its lasting mark etched into the very earth, a silent echo of forgotten lives. The chronicler's ink. As the morning mist drifted like a burial shroud over the silent, broken bodies of the medieval battlefield, and rusting swords slowly surrendered to the mud, a profound struggle for control over memory began. The chronicler's ink was a silent, powerful weapon. History writes the brave and omits the broken, transforming the brutal chaos of combat into a carefully constructed narrative, dictating whose glory would endure and whose suffering would be utterly erased. A chilling testament to the subjective nature of history and the immense, unseen power wielded by those who held the quill. Imagine the air thick with the subtle scent of old parchment, dry ink and beeswax from countless candles, mingling with the earthy aroma of old stone and lingering ambition. The sounds are no longer the distant clang of steel. They include the rhythmic scratch of a quill on vellum, the low murmur of a scribe, and the profound, almost oppressive silence of a monastic scriptorium. Moonlight falling on broken amphitheatres, now reflected in the cold, stained glass windows of a castle, illuminates a silent, meticulous act of creation. Far from the mud and blood of the battlefield, in the relative safety of a monastery or a lord's castle, the chronicler, often a monk, a cleric, or a court scribe, would begin his work. His task was to record the events of the battle, to document the triumphs of his lord, to preserve the history of his time. But this was not an impartial account. It was a narrative shaped by allegiance, by agenda, and by the prevailing ideals of chivalry. Listen to the rhythmic scratch of a quill on fine vellum, a precise, deliberate sound in the hushed scriptorium as the chronicler carefully formed elegant Latin letters. Hear the low murmur of his own voice, perhaps, as he dictated the words to an assistant, his tone measured, his narrative flowing with a sense of predetermined glory. See the carefully crafted sentences, the glowing initial letters, the rich, jewel-toned illustrations, all serving to elevate the narrative. History writes the brave and omits the broken. The chronicler's ink flowed, meticulously documenting the deeds of the brave, the valiant charges of knights, the strategic genius of the lord, the unwavering loyalty of his chosen men. Their names would be inscribed in glowing prose, their courage celebrated, their triumphs magnified. This was the glory of war enshrined in permanent record, destined to inspire future generations. History writes the brave and omits the broken, but the broken were omitted. The suffering of the common foot soldiers, the nameless thousands who perished in the mud, the horrific injuries, the profound psychological trauma, the brutal realities of starvation and disease. These grim details were largely absent from the official chronicles. Their stories were untold, their names forgotten, their sacrifices absorbed into the anonymous mass of casualties. The purpose was clear: to glorify the victors, to legitimize the Lord's power, to construct a heroic narrative that reinforced the existing social and political order. The chronicle was a powerful tool of propaganda, shaping collective memory, perpetuating the myth of chivalric honor, and burying the true horror beneath a glittering veil of poetic license. The psychological impact was immense. The narratives they created shaped the understanding of warfare for generations, influencing future knights and rulers. presenting a sanitized, romanticized version of combat that often bore little resemblance to its brutal reality. The Chronicler's ink was a pervasive, fundamental reality of medieval warfare, transforming the aftermath of combat into a chilling testament to the power of narrative and the profound manipulation of memory. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of history and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its true cost buried beneath the eloquent, selective truth of the written word. The long silence. After the deafening clamor of battle, after the grim work of burying the dead, after the chronicler's ink had woven its tales of selective glory, a different kind of truth descended upon the medieval battlefield. The long silence was a profound, enduring legacy. The birds return. The field forgets. Only the bones remain to whisper the truth, transforming the scene of brutal carnage into a haunting, timeless monument, perpetually echoing the immense human cost of war and asserting nature's ultimate, indifferent triumph over the fleeting ambitions of humanity. Imagine the air, crisp and clean, thick with the subtle scent of thawing earth, new growth, and the lingering aroma of damp soil, mingled with the profound quiet of history. The sounds are no longer the distant clang of steel or the trumpet's blare. They include the tentative chirping of birds, the gentle rustle of new grasses, and the low murmur of the wind sweeping across the field. Mist covers the ground like a burial shroud, now lifting to reveal a landscape slowly healing but forever marked. The battle had ended, the armies had departed, taking their banners, their trumpets, their living. What remained was the land itself, scarred and desecrated, but slowly, inexorably reclaiming its own. Listen to the tentative chirping of birds. Their small voices a profound counterpoint to the long, deep silence that had gripped the field. Hear the gentle rustle of new grasses pushing their way through the churned earth, slowly covering the scars of conflict. See the field, once a stage for martial glory, now subtly healing, its contours softened by new growth, its surface slowly returning to its natural state. The birds return, the field forgets. Nature, indifferent to human ambition and suffering, began its slow, relentless process of healing and reclamation. Grasses would grow over the burial pits, wildflowers would bloom where blood had stained the earth, small animals would burrow beneath the soil. The violent, chaotic energy of battle would dissipate, absorbed by the land, leaving behind a profound, almost serene stillness. But the field never truly forgot. For beneath the new growth, beneath the layers of soil deep in the earth, lay the enduring truth. Only the bones remained to whisper the truth. Fragments of bone, skulls, femurs, ribs, the silent, bleached white remnants of thousands of lives still lay buried in the ground, some in individual graves, many in anonymous mass pits. Rusted fragments of armor, a broken sword hilt, a forgotten buckle. These were the physical whispers, the enduring, tangible proof of the brutal clash that occurred here. These bones, these relics, spoke a truth far more profound than any minstrel's tale. They spoke of the anonymity of death, the indiscriminate nature of violence, the immense human cost of war. They whispered of the terror, the pain, the despair, the countless forgotten lives that lay beneath the green. The psychological impact on future generations, on those who might one day plough these fields and unearth these grim relics, would be immense. It was a stark, visceral reminder of their ancestors' struggles, a chilling counterpoint to the romanticized narratives of glory. The birds return, the field forgets. Only the bones remain to whisper the truth. The long silence was a pervasive, fundamental reality after medieval warfare, transforming the brutal aftermath of combat into a chilling testament to human suffering and profound loss. It was a somber, immersive descent into chaos, charting the quiet horror beneath the glory and enduring countless moments after the clash, forever tethered to the relentless burden of memory and the grim reality of an unromanticized death, its lasting mark etched into the very earth, a silent echo of forgotten lives, endlessly whispering their truth through time.